Welcome to the Vet Med Wellness and Leadership Podcast, where we discuss central challenges vet med leaders face, such as burnout, stress, and difficult interactions with clients and staff, just to name a few. In each episode, you will hear about actionable solutions that you can apply to your practice and invitations to connect with fellow leaders who are passionate about improving the wellness of the vet med profession. By subscribing, liking, commenting, or sharing this podcast, you are helping more veterinary professionals find the resources shared in these episodes. Thank you in advance for listening and supporting this show. I hope you enjoy it. Hey everybody, Crystal Stokes here, and joining me today is a returned guest, Dr. Jennifer Edwards. She is a former veterinary practice owner turned leadership coach, and she leverages over 25 years in the veterinary field to inspire growth. From building a multi-million-dollar practice to guiding professionals through transformation, she empowers leaders to turn challenges and success with conscious leadership. So Jennifer, thank you for being back.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm super excited about today's topic.
Me too. So this topic is very relevant in the practice that we do at Full Circle Lab. This is a hot topic that we talk about on a weekly basis. So to introduce that topic, and we'll let you take it away, is the role of personal values and work-life satisfaction. So let's just start with those who may be very green to this conversation of like, okay, we know work-life satisfaction. We're all trying to get it. We ain't got no satisfaction. It's really hard. But values, like that's kind of vague. So we can just start there. Like, what are values?
Yeah. So, values can mean different things to different people, right? And so the way I like to look at it is a value is anything that makes something important to us, right? So if we feel really strongly about something in a good way for our life, then we consider that a value. Values will help to guide our decisions sometimes not. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But the other way you can think of a value is it's a thought associated with an emotion, right? So, for example, for me, one of my really strong values is kindness. And how do I know that kindness is a strong value for me? Is because if I think about a situation, I don't even have to see it. I can just think about a situation where kindness is not present, either to a person or an animal, especially a child. It's like I get this feeling welling up inside of me, like I just can't stand it. I'm a conflict avoider, but oh boy, that would be one place I would jump in because no, this is not happening. And so it's those feelings that accompany the thought, like the thought of, oh, that's not nice, is accompanied by these strong feelings. And that's how I know it's so important to me. If I had no feelings, it would be just another thought and I wouldn't think again about it. Does that make sense?
I love that. So the part of what makes something a value is like the charge that that emotion would carry. It makes me think of when I was first led to exploring my own values. One of the guided meditation that somebody took me on was they had us imagine something that either brought very strong positive emotions or very strong negative emotions. And then you go through that mental experience of remembering that time and then mining for the values within the experience. So you described seeing something treated with lack of kindness, that brought the strong negative emotion, and you wanted to rectify that by helping create more kindness in that situation or standing up for the victim who was not treated kindly. I think one of my core values was responsibility and being responsive. So, if I imagine situations where I see that, like, let's say you're a bystander and something just happened, could turn a blind eye and walk by, that would make me irate. Like, you, just by noticing that it had happened, like as a little kid that somebody littered, I'd be like, oh, it's our responsibility to take care of the planet. Like, you must pull over and pick up the trash. It's not my trash. It's everybody's trash. It's the planet. Like, I was that kid. So there's a responsibility of we're all responsible all the time for all the things, which I think is a value could probably be taken too far. And then, you don't have any work-life satisfaction because I'm too responsible. But I think I can see where you're going with it, that looking at the things that you care deeply about and that bring up a strong emotion.
Right. And you bring up a good point, and that is that we do have more than one value, right? As human beings, we have what I consider our deal breaker values, right? The 3 to 5 that are like 100% have to be present. or whatever the situation is just is not tolerable. And then there's the important values. It's really nice when those things are present. If they're not, maybe we could work around it. But you're right. When we focus so much on one value and we don't fulfill the other values in our life, then that can create, that feeling of being off balance, as that term implies.
Right. So should we dive into how do values, how do they impact the decisions we make and the interactions that we have on a daily basis at work?
Yes. And this is so powerful, which is part of the reason I get so excited to talk about it. And I'm going to use a very technical term here, we all have our icky meter. And that's when things in our lives just feel icky, right? You talk to that person, something's going on at work, maybe it's your whole job. It could be anything, right? And you just, people make that face for those that are listening to this, that face and that feeling in your belly where you go, something about this is just not right. It's just icky. You get that icky feeling. And there's just, for me, no better word. And whenever that feeling is present is usually a really good indicator that there is a value for you that is not in alignment with what's going on. So first of all, that serves as a really powerful context to explore. There's something about the way this person is presenting this material that's just giving me this icky feeling. You can go in and say, well, what about it? What is he saying? What is he talking about? Is it that I get a feeling he's not being honest? Is it I get a feeling he's trying to be manipulative? Is he arrogant? Whatever it could be, if that is an important value to you, then that will set that off. So for example, if he's being arrogant and a know-it-all and humility is an important value for you, then that's going to really make that person not feel right to you. If you don't care about humility and you don't think twice about it, you may not even notice his arrogance. And if you do, you don't care. So number one is if things just don't feel good for you, if there's situations at work, if you go to work and you're like, there's just something annoying or something doesn't feel right, start to explore that. The other thing is that when we are faced with decisions, what we're going to want to do, if we want to create a life that feels fulfilled and that feels like it's flowing with ease, the more decisions that we can make that are aligned with our values, the easier life will feel. Because your life will start to be aligned with your values. And when things are aligned with our values, not my life aligned with your values, my life aligned with my values, which is another important point, then that's when things are like, they feel good, they flow. It doesn't mean everything's easy, but there is ease, even when things are not easy and things start to feel good.
I really can resonate with this personally and with the work that we do with clients, where I've seen so many clients come to us that say, and like it had that lost feeling. I don't know how I got here. Like when I entered into vet med, this is not what I imagined. And now I feel like I'm, painting myself into a corner and I don't know how to get out. There's a lot of that dissonance that you're describing, like that ick factor each day, a sense of being drained, a sense of like, whatever I'm doing isn't filling my cup. And I think that many people get very disconnected from the values that they have lived by that drew them into veterinary medicine in the first place, and kind of reconnecting with those as a starting point before you make any decisions, before you take a step in any direction, just to say, well, what are those values that I have and how are they being nurtured or neglected in the work that I'm doing day to day? Do you have any examples from the people that you've worked with on maybe how you've helped them, reconnect with those values if they felt disconnected from them, or maybe they've never really done values-based work before, so they don't have a language for it yet? Are there any quick examples you could share with us?
Yeah, well, there's so many examples because like you alluded to with your clients, it's the same thing with my clients, that it's often the underlying factor in many things that are not working in people's lives. Mm-hmm. And like you said, in veterinary medicine, oh gosh, this conversation can go so deep with the values, what I call values challenges, when values are not aligned with situations in our lives. And there's values around money, there's values around kindness, there's values around quality of care, values around thoroughness. I mean, veterinarians by definition are high achieving people, right? You're not going to get into vet school or out of vet school if you're not a high achieving person. And now all of a sudden you go from being rewarded in life for being thorough, complete, a good student, dotting your I's, crossing your T's, to working for a corporate practice that's like more appointments, more appointments, more appointments, go, 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 go. And you don't even have time to write up your records completely or fully think out your differentials. That's a huge values challenge. You know, money is important for all of us. Mm-hmm. And that's we could do a whole talk on the value around money in veterinary medicine, but there's so much going on right now where you have, especially a lot of these younger veterinarians are coming out of school with incredible amounts of debt. Mm-hmm. And so on the one hand, there's this, you know, they want to have a value, or they have a value of having a good quality of life. They feel like they can't because of money. They have all this pressure from corporate to make money. Yet then they have these values coming at them from society saying, you don't deserve to make money. It's this complete head-spinning incongruency that's part of the dysfunctionality right now of this profession. And it's hard for people to make sense of it when they're in it.
It is. It's really confusing when you're in the middle of it, because it's like you're in a giant storm cloud and you can't get perspective unless you can rise above it and see it more clearly. I think the topic around like money and the type of care that we're able to provide, and it's similar as psychotherapists as well. You know, we come out of school wanting to do the very best medicine or the very best therapy possible. Like you have the Cadillac treatment plan of what you would want to do with this client. And then like as a therapist, you hit the reality of insurance that says, well, we know in your treatment plan, you would need, 40 sessions with this person, but we're going to give you 10. Good luck treating that severe lifelong disorder with 10 hours of work. Go for it. And you're like, And I think that in veterinary medicine, what we see is that we need to have a spectrum of care based on what the client can do, like financially, the situation, quality of life for the pet. There's just so many variables that we don't, I'd imagine in vet school, like how could you fit all that in to a 4-year curriculum? There's so much you have to learn, and that some of it's learned boots on the ground in the practice. And then depending on the type of practice and their value system that they operate here, you as a person, as a doctor, may have a very different set of values than the corporation or the group that you work with. And so how do you bridge that gap, or even recognize that the gap exists rather than, feeling like you're failing?
Right. And so the first step is for people to consider that the reason they're not happy is because there's a values challenge at play, and then start to identify what that is. And that's, like you were saying, some of the work that we do with clients is, number one, let's do some work to figure out what's important to you. No judgment, no right or wrong. What's important to you? What words, even just simple words that when you see them, lights you up and gives you that charge, as you referred to it earlier. And then start to explore what values that are important to you are present and what values that are important to you are not present. And is this going to work? And so one of the things that I believe is there's kind of like three possible, there's a lot of possible ways, but three categorical possible ways to address a values challenge. And so you can dive in, start to do that work, and then from a conscious values-based perspective, is start to make choices and decisions for your life that are aligned. So the tricky part is sometimes we're faced with a decision where we have values on both sides, and we're like, okay, well, financial security and loyalty are really important to me, so I want to stay in my job. However, the people who I work with aren't always kind, and kindness is also a really important value. So do I leave to go find someplace more kind, per se, or do I stay and fulfill my financial security and loyalty? And so then that starts to become a whole nother diving in to figure out, well, what's more important?
So personally, when I've been in this exact situation, like as you're saying, and I'm like, ooh, I get little chills because I'm like, I've been there. That's my life. kind of the responsibility and financial responsibility versus a need to innovate and grow. And, like we all have, that's why I think doing the values work is so important, to know which values you have inside of you and which ones may be competing. Something that helped me a lot was saying this particular value A, B, C, or D, whichever one, is going to take the lead right now. Give it permission to lead. I'm going to let this value have the spotlight while the other values are maybe in the passenger seat or the back seat of the car, and that's okay. This one's going to drive the bus for the next 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, and just let that be. Because I think that for me, the toggling, trying to keep all the values even, like I have to express all my values at all times, doesn't seem to work. And I'd love for you to speak to that, because those of us who have the perfectionistic tendency, right? We want our values to all have that way of showing up in our life. And we want to do this the right way. So Jennifer, do you mind if I ask more of a personal question?
Of course not.
Maybe we could both share, like, how have our values changed in our professional life? Like through your journey and all the work that you've done, have your values changed? And if so, how?
Oh, that's a really great question. I'm trying to discern. I think it's probably the answer to my own question is both, of whether or not have I changed my values, or have I changed the expression of my values? And I do think that as we age, as we get older and we get into different stages of our careers, I think just naturally for most people, values change. So when we're younger, when we're just getting out of school, it's about having a strong value of proving yourself and establishing yourself and, gaining credibility. I'm a lifelong learner. I never stop learning, but the value driving the learning might be different now than when I first got out of school. So I think that the expression, because of where I am in life, has shifted. I've always had a strong value around service. I think now that is more at the forefront of what I do as a coach and a speaker, because I've already proven myself. I've already, built and sold the business. Like I've already done all that. Like I don't have to worry about that anymore. So now I can just take everything I've learned and experienced and now offer it to others so that they can learn and grow. So I think for me, maybe it's not so much that they've changed as much as the expression of them have changed.
I think that's very beautifully said. When I reflected on mine, I think that mine may have just shifted around in terms of what had a louder voice. When I was younger, I was very focused on the result. If I'm here to do a job for you in your company or whatever it may be, I'm gonna get that job done. And I don't, how and what it feels like is secondary. And this is very much flipped, that the relational experience always comes first. How you and I feel together in this work that we are doing, whether you are one of my team members or you are a client or whatever it may be, like we're just working on a conference together, any kind of relationship, that the relational field is so juicy and rich. And that's what life is actually about. And the result is secondary. The result comes, that's going to come. We're going to get that work done. But I want this to be really solid first and always, kept front and center. And as a youngster, if somebody had told me that, I would have just rolled my eyes. I would have been like, oh, see how please. And I don't know what it was that made that change, but probably that it's so effective that when you see how good it feels and how well it works, it's like, why would we do it any other way? Why would we put relationships second to anything? Because they are so critical.
I have a theory, just listening to you, and I'm curious if this resonates. I wonder if it's not that the value of the results orientation is less than it was, as much as your competency and confidence in all these years of experience now is so much higher that you don't have to focus on it. You just subconsciously, you're going to produce a good result. Mm-hmm. And so now you're able to focus more on the relationship that was always important. But when you had less confidence and less experience when you were younger, you had to make sure the results were there. Whereas now just knowing you and how you strive for excellence, the results just happen because of who you are. Because if you had a situation where they weren't happening, I have a feeling that would kick in and fix it.
I think you're right I think you said it really, really, it feels very accurate the way you described it. Because I do think when we're younger, just like you said, trying to prove yourself with growing a company and selling a company, like before you've done it, it seems so daunting, like everything you had to do to get to that point. And I think it's similar with Full Circle Lab or just all the work, starting off as a green therapist, for instance, you're like so afraid, like, is this work really going to work? The stuff you've learned in school and you're applying it, there's a nervousness there. But once you've done it for such a long time and you have that confidence that you don't have to spend so much time worrying about that and try to prove yourself, I think you really said it well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when I think about most veterinarians, they can probably relate to this, right? When we first get out of school and we're doing, our first couple of spays on our own, and obviously we're very focused on having a good outcome, right? And that's priority. And we're like every stitch, every like vessel, you check, you double check, you check, yeah, and you check again, and you're like, okay, and you close and you pray, and you're all so focused on it. And then you fast forward 10, 15 years and you're doing a spay and then you're done and the animal's closed and you're like, did I even take out both ovaries? And you're like, oh yeah, there they are, because you've been just chit-chatting with your staff.
Yeah.
Right. So there becomes this competency that allows us to, it doesn't mean my value of excellence is any less. I just don't have to focus on it. But if in a moment something went wrong, right, I guarantee you the attention would refocus right into that problem and get busy fixing it. So yeah, that it makes sense when we talk about it like that.
It's so interesting.
Yeah.
People are listening today. Could we also share with them, what does it look like if we don't live a values-based life? Like when it comes to our work-life satisfaction, just the way we show up in the world, what's the result if values are just not a part of that equation?
Yeah, well, one of the things, that happens a lot, and I think it's extremely common, and part of the reason why so many people feel stuck and dissatisfied with several areas of their life. Mm-hmm. Living aligned with your values needs to take conscious choice and conscious effort. When we allow life to happen to us, mm-hmm. when we are not proactive in our decisions, when we don't say, weigh the values on two sides of a decision and pick the one that's more important to us, or at least the one that we're choosing, and go with it. Decisions are made anyway. Whether you make them consciously or not, life just keeps happening. So what can happen then is if we're not proactive about it, if we're not conscious in our choices and decisions, then fast forward 10 years, we look around us and we're sitting inside of a life that just happened. And then we accepted it. And then something else happened and we just accepted it, and something else and something else and something else. And all of a sudden you're like, this all just sucks. Like nothing works. Nothing feels good. I'm not happy. And now because it's all around me, I'm stuck. Like, how do I even get out of this now? It's almost like you're digging yourself into a pit. Because remember, not making a choice, when faced with a choice or a decision, not making a choice is making a choice, right? And so what's ending up happening is that the person is making lots and lots and lots of choices that don't work for them. And that could be because of lack of awareness. It could be because of lack of confidence, lack of feeling like they deserve it. I mean, the reasons why this happens goes on and on and on. Mm-hmm. Now, starting to consciously create a values-aligned life is one little decision at a time. And sometimes they're not easy decisions. If you have, like, for example, just use the one I said earlier. If you decide kindness is a really strong value and that you're just like, it has to be present, or in big things in your life, in your partnership relationship, in your family, in your work, well, there might be friends that you have to say goodbye to. Mm-hmm. Because they're just nasty and mean and always talking about people. And no matter how much you express that doesn't work, you don't want to hear that, they won't stop. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be mean, but you may make the choice of, you know what, this friendship isn't really serving me anymore. So creating a values-aligned life is not always easy, but neither is living in a life that's not values-aligned. No. So I would say if you're going to choose I love the term choose your hard. Yeah. Right. So
either way is hard. What kind of hard do you pick? Yeah,
exactly.
So how can people achieve it? Like, do you want to walk us through any steps that you would like to recommend? So let's say I'm listening, I'm going, okay, I want to do this. Like, I'm down. I want to learn how to live a more values-based life. Like, how do I achieve that?
Yeah, well, first, I would recommend figuring out what's important, right? And there's a million different values assessments out there, right? Just find one and circle the little words that resonate with you, and start to just get an idea of what's important. Mm-hmm. And then the next thing you could do is start to identify areas of life that aren't working. And I actually have a workshop where I bring people through a very detailed process in this, because this work can go very, very, very deep. But just for a beginning step, so identify an area of life that's not working for you. Like, say, I just can't get along with my practice manager. Like, say you're a vet or a veterinary technician or a receptionist or whatever. And I just can't get along with my practice manager. I'm just making this up. Okay, so what does that mean? What does not get along mean? Well, write it all down. They do this bothers me, that, and that. Okay, write it all down. And then have your list of values that you circled, and have your list of things that are not working in whatever situation you wrote down, and just start to kind of cross-reference them and say, what on this list of values is at play here? You know, what's either not present, or really what's not present? Because if they were present, you'd feel good, or maybe one is present but not others, right? So maybe you have a strong value around financial security. Like I said before, you're making really good money, and and maybe even friendship is important, and you love everybody you work with, so that's satisfied. Right? But these other values aren't satisfied. So just start to play around with it, and then maybe think of one small thing that you could change to make anything in your life more aligned with one of your values. And that's just, it's a good basic place to start, just to start playing and get the idea of values. But the power of this work, I know you've seen it with your clients, like I can't even emphasize enough. And you can go deeper and deeper and deeper. And again, like I always say, trying to really figure a lot of this stuff out on your own for anybody is very, very difficult, because as a human, our minds are not designed to be able to see what we can't see, to see what's in our subconscious, which is usually the stuff that's running our lives and we don't even know it. So I always say, get help, work with coaches, work with a therapist, do a group program. There's so many options out there to start to have other people to be able to be your mirror, so that you can start to see more. Awareness opens up and possibilities arise, and then you're off.
And that's something that, you are very, very good at, asking those powerful questions and reflecting stuff back to people in a way that is not intimidating. It's fun, it's friendly, it's playful. Like, you bring that lighthearted energy. So I think that people feel really safe with doing this kind of work, because it can be vulnerable. It's like trying to peel our layers back and really rediscover and reconnect with who we are, and also who we aspire to be, and having that journey with you that you feel really confident in. I think that one of the things that we really enjoy doing at Full Circle is we like the assessment piece a lot. Like, we put a lot of work into our values assessment. It's because I noticed that some people, you give them a list and they just go for it. They're like, oh, the words, like, I know which words I'm picking is me. And it really works. Other people pick words and they go, I think I just picked the ones I thought I should pick. I don't know. If I did this tomorrow, I might pick new words. So the list one doesn't work for everybody. So I use an amalgamation of things that I learned as a therapist and in my coach training. And we made like this longer version of assessment that has multiple tools in it that it depends on, like, pick your, which game you want to play, like which version of that helps you the most. Because I think that's where people seem to struggle. It's just getting a grip on what values you identify with just right now. You don't have to commit to them for your whole life. They might change with time, or, like you said, they kind of evolve as you grow, and that's fine. We can continue to reassess values every 6 months or 1 year or 2 years. But that part of getting that conversation going. And whenever I've experienced working with you and the interactions we've had, I think that your strength really lies in that place of digging deep into something and looking at the alignment of how those values play out in your life right now, having some tenderness around that. Because sometimes recognizing it hurts. It's like, wow, I've spent 5, 10, 15 years of my life here. feeling like a victim, but now recognizing that my decision-making or lack of decision-making has maybe partly played a role in being here. And now that I can grieve that, some empowerment can come back. Like now that I see it, the subconscious is brought to consciousness. And I know that's one of the things you specialize in is consciousness, conscious leadership, consciously planning your next micro step to eat that giant whale one bite at a time, because that's how you eventually build a life. Like you said, many, many, many little moves builds a life.
Yes, there's so much you said there that everything you said, I so wholeheartedly agree. And yes, that is, for me, I can speak to my passion is in creating that safe space for people. People say, how are you not judgmental? Like, when I've had coaching clients say, like, I just feel like I can say anything. And it's like, I truly see that there is nothing to judge. See, because everything we're talking about right now, everything, all the subconscious garbage we have driving our lives and all the trauma and the grief and all the stuff is so normal. Yeah. It's not, we all think we have our little secret of like, oh, I've got all my baggage. Guess what? If you're human, you've got it. And so I don't see that there's anything to judge. I just think that, for me, it's this exercise in uncovering what I already know is there. And how do I know it's there? Because you're human.
Every human.
Right? It's there for me. I've worked with coaches for forever. I've done every program you could mention, right? Like I do all the same stuff because as much as I have all of this, a lot of knowledge about this sort of thing, I also can't always see it in myself. That's just the way we're designed.
Yeah.
So there's nothing to judge. It's all totally, totally normal. And I would just love people to hear that, because what I see sometimes is that there's this element of shame that hold people back from getting help. And whether it's just things that in life that are they feel stuck and maybe working with a coach, or even getting help for more severe situations like clinical depression or, person considering hurting themselves. It's like there's this shame. And I can't emphasize enough that there's just nothing to be shameful about. It's unfortunately kind of the way we're designed, but we don't have to be victim to it. We don't have to be miserable. There's ways of uncovering things that we go, oh my gosh, I had no idea. And worlds of possibility open up. I just cannot emphasize it. And one last thing I just wanted to point out based on something that you said, and this is something that a lot of people may not consider. You said people circle the words that they think that they should circle on the values assessment. They're like, well, I know I'm supposed to, and that is a huge, huge part of it, is to start to recognize values that you, quote, have that actually aren't yours.
Yeah, they're hijacking it.
Yes. So things that are taught to us by family, society, religious organizations, maybe a school that you went to. And very often people are going through life holding on to a set of values that they feel that are theirs, and they're perfectly okay with it. And they don't think twice about the fact that they don't actually really buy into it until they're faced with a values challenge around that particular value. And then they're like, oh my gosh. And a perfect example would be, say, somebody who was brought up with, the belief, and there's no right or wrong here. I don't have an opinion, but say they were taught that no matter what, you never get divorced. Ever, ever, ever. Like, you make it work. That's just the way it is. And they're like, okay. And they don't think about it. And they fast forward in life, they're married and they're miserable. And maybe even worse, maybe it's even abusive. And now they're faced with the values around being in a terrible relationship and happiness and peace and dignity and all the things versus this other value that they're like, wait a minute, like, I don't even believe in that. That's ridiculous. But now there's guilt. Now there's worry of judgment from other people. Like this stuff plays really big roles in our life, and we don't even realize it.
Yeah, operates in the background. That's what you said, the subconscious piece is trying to bring it into your awareness. And once you see it, you can't really unsee it.
Yes. It's like everything. That's why we're so passionate about awareness, right?
I know. It's for hours. But since we are coming down the home stretch, are there any final takeaways that you want to leave people with before we tell them how they can reach out to you if they want to connect?
Yeah, I guess my final takeaway is just more of a reiteration of anybody who's listening right now. Just believe me. If for no other reason, just say, I'm going to blindly have faith in this woman speaking on this podcast. Believe me when I tell you that you deserve to live a values-aligned life, whatever those values are for you, not for your parents, not for your partner, not for your friends, for you. And it is possible for you to create that little by little. You can start to create a life that feels good, that has ease, that is not full of anxiety, that is not full of angst. It's a choice to get started on that journey, even if you don't know how, but it is possible. And so that's just my final thing I would like to leave with everybody, and just hopefully spark some hope and some inspiration and somebody to start taking the next steps for themselves.
I love that. I will second that, Jennifer. I think that's just beautiful. And for those listening today, if they want to reach out and connect with you, what's the best way for them to find you?
Well, they can visit my website, which is simply drjenniferedwards.com with a DR for the doctor. And feel free to check out my website. I have a free book that you can download. It's on how to create the context of happiness for your life. And check out like various events and all the things.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being on. We'll link that up in the show notes so nobody has to hunt for it. And it's always such a pleasure to have you here. I'm sure you'll be back again with another juicy topic. Thanks for your time today.
I would love to. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me today. I hope that you feel stoked after listening to this episode. And as always, I would love to hear your comments and feedback. Is there a topic that you want to know more about? Please let me know. And thank you again for subscribing and sharing your favorite episodes with others. It really means a lot.